Hello again, classy people, this is Josh the Top Hat Gamer, and this week I'm reviewing Battlefield Hardline. I'll be the first to admit that online multiplayer, not really my thing. But with the team behind the Dead Space series heading the development of Battlefield Hardline, could the game deliver a decent single-player campaign on top of the expected multiplayer experience? Let's find out. Battlefield Hardline's single-player campaign is presented in the style of a TV cop show. You play through these episodes as Nick Mendoza, a Miami police detective caught up in the city's war on drugs. Digging deeper into Miami's seedy underbelly gives you the impression that drugs aren't the only problem in the city. The campaign totally feels like something you could watch on TV. The story is entertaining if extremely predictable, and each episode reaches an exciting climax. Other little touches like episode recaps and previews are neat, but would probably be better served if you intend to break up play sessions instead of blasting through like I do. The story has a surprisingly diverse cast of characters, and the interactions between them are probably the highlights of the campaign. While they aren't all deep and nuanced, there's more character growth and better storytelling here than I went in expecting. Battlefield Hardline admittedly looks spectacular, and really shines when the sun sets on the battlefield as you dodge explosions and gunfire. Those lighting effects are magnificent. The locations you visit are also pretty varied, ranging from the city streets to the gator-infested waters of the Everglades. The highlight of the single-player campaign takes you to a rain-swept mall as a hurricane bears down on the city. It looks spectacular to say the least. As with most Battlefield games, the destructible environments are stunning and useful, giving the environment a dynamic feel as you use it to your advantage to flank opponents. The sound design is also amazing, as we've come to expect from the Battlefield titles. The crack of explosions and pop of gunfire sounds earth-shakingly powerful, and the voice acting is decent to say the least. Accompanying the solid VO are some exceptional facial animations, which really sell the performances. The use of a few licensed songs on radios and through PA systems also contribute to Battlefield Hardline's real-world feel. Hardline's gameplay remains largely unchanged from previous Battlefield titles. What you'll get here is squad-based first-person shooting with plenty of vehicular gameplay thrown in for good measure. The single-player campaign will have you taking down various gangs in Miami as a detective in the police force, and the gameplay reflects this by giving you the ability to subdue and arrest assailants without alerting other enemies. In fact, it feels as though this stealthy approach is how the game intends you to play. The arrest mechanic has a surprising amount of depth. You're able to flash your badge and force multiple assailants to drop their weapons at once, but keeping them in an arrestable state requires you to point your gun at them so they don't try to shoot you. It forces players to use some strategic maneuvering to keep criminals in your line of sight, and things soon pick up if you fail an arrest attempt. The focus on stealth wouldn't be an issue, but the stealth isn't great, and having one guard alerted to your presence will automatically alert the rest of the area to your location. Hardline takes a few cues from the Far Cry series by actually allowing you to tag enemies with a scanner and turning alarms off, but its stealth just falls flat in the end. The game's core shooter gameplay, however, feels merely okay, and while moving your character around has a realistic weight to it, firing your weapons doesn't feel as good as it should. Despite the powerful sound design, the gunplay just feels weak overall. Adding a bit of variety to your standard corridor sneaky shooty action are a few neat gadgets. These gadgets do offer a little bit of freedom when it comes to approaching situations, and while using a grappling hook or zipline to access a hidden entry to an enemy hideout is cool, it's not an option most of the time. Also serving to break up the action are the vehicle sections that are peppered throughout the single-player campaign. Though they serve their purpose, they're never particularly interesting. They feel fast, but there's very little depth to them. The action heats up in the multiplayer for sure, with many new objective-based modes being added to the list of game types. Hotwire mode is a vehicular capture the flag, for instance, and rescue gives players a hostage situation to deal with. A couple of mainstay modes return, and Battlefield veterans will find themselves feeling right at home. Unfortunately, my experiences online were wildly inconsistent as far as connection quality goes, but it's still pretty fun when it works well. As far as content goes, the multiplayer should keep fans entertained for a decent amount of time. But if multiplayer isn't your thing, then each campaign level provides evidence to examine for overarching case files that can be solved. They don't add a whole lot to the game, but they do flesh out the game setting a little bit more. Unfortunately, I might just not be a Battlefield guy, and Hardline doesn't do anything too major to swing me to its side. Its TV show-styled campaign surprised me with its diverse cast of characters and enjoyable yet predictable plot. And while the game looks and sounds great, the game feel just isn't satisfying, and the single player's strange focus on lackluster stealth is disappointing. The multiplayer can be quite fun, but I had such a varied network experience that it's hard to say what the core experience is actually like. Battlefield Hardline gets the Top Hat Gamer rating of mediocre. Its single-player campaign is leaps and bounds ahead of what previous Battlefield games have given us, and its presentation quality is top-notch, but I can't help but feel like the gameplay is missing some oomph. If you're a Battlefield fan, you're guaranteed to have a better time than I have, but it's just not for me. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the review informative and stuff. If you missed last week's review on Bloodborne, click the annotation. Now, credit where it's due, at least you can't shoot a surrendering suspect in this game, which is more than I can say for the real world.